very, very difficult to be a consultant and you are coming from Capri. I'll tell you what. You know, I go a lot of time to work in Capri in my job. And when I come back, I meet my friend and I'm telling them, no, I've been to Katima a lot of time on consulting. They're like, are you consulting in Katima or across the river? Because consulting in Zambezi means a totally different thing. So they think I'm going there to consult. Consult. Okay, so without wasting too much of your time, sorry. Yes, we are discussing a very serious matter here. Apology for that. So I am a very practical person, and I like to put things into perspective. And allow me to put this discussion into perspective, and then I'll try to connect it to the budget. Now, I would like to start with a little story. And the story goes as follows. In 2015, I used to have a very good friend of mine who owned this house in some neighborhood across the railway, not this side, this side. And I went to Europe to do some work, and I came back. I went straight to him because I used to, that's the only place I'll take some selfies. So I went to see if I can take another selfie, and I was told he's not there, he had moved. So I followed him, he gave me some direction, and I followed him, I called him in this house. So, well, you know, I wanted to take selfies, but I couldn't look at the house. So we discussed, I asked him what happened, he couldn't tell me exactly what happened, he just mumbled here and there, but then, okay, end of the story. Then this friend of mine had this car. Then I thought it was parked somewhere behind this house, but he told me he hasn't seen this car, he now drives this car. I asked him again, what happened? Well, he told me it's a long story. I said, okay, fine. Then I thought maybe from here we'll go to his business. This used to be his business. He used to own a lot of trucks. Then we went to his business and I only found one truck. I asked him what happened. He said, well, I don't know. Then I told him that I know what happened. And I'm going to tell you what happened, what I told him. So I told him that what really happened is that he got caught up in the business cycle of things. If you look quickly, you realize that between 2013 and 2014, things were okay. And then 2015-16 started not so well. Things started going very not so well. And in 2017-2018, things were really bad. Now, the reason why I put this is I want to put you into perspective as to what is really on the ground. From a business perspective, we who are on the ground, this is the reality on the ground. We have seen so many of our friends who used to drive so expensive cars. Now we are sharing the same seat of the taxi. Now we ask ourselves, but what happened? And we need to understand so that all of us work together and move forward, because this is not an isolated incident, my friend. If I ask around the room, for those of you who used to drive Range Rovers 3 years ago, and now they are sharing the same car with me, I will see a lot of hands. But we need to understand what really happened. And if we look carefully to the Namibian business cycle, this is what we can pick up. The period between 2013 and 2014 is regarded as a boom period. This is a time when things were happening. This is a time when you wake up, you're an entrepreneur, and you have got 3 houses in Bloomfield. Yeah? Well, this is a time where I also called myself a business person, even though I was just waiting for myself. Because tenders were left, right, and center, contracts I could get. But then 2015 came in. Things started going slowly. And you see, you get 3 months without a job, without a contract, without a tender. Tenders were only reserved for those, well, I'm not going to say who, but yeah, you know. And then, well, as if this was not enough, 2017, 2018, serious, reality began to hit. We saw a number of shops closing. We saw a number of, if you go to the back side of the newspaper, Standard Bank versus Mali, Standard Bank, a lot of lawsuits, a lot of repossession took place. That was in 2017, 2018. Now you can see the coincidence of these cycles. Why am I saying these things? I'm saying these things because there is a high correlation between the reality on the ground, the sectors, the economy, to the way the economy has been going. And if you look carefully, you can position yourself, especially those from the private sector. I don't know much from the public sector because that's another different angle. But from the private sector, you can see certain sectors that were really, really hard. And you could see that they coincide with what happened in the economy. I'm only having 5 minutes. Now, I will skip this one because this is pretty general. These are some of the factors that really hit the business sector very hard. The costs of operating, competitiveness, maintenance costs, and operational costs. These are the realities on the ground. And the most recent data that I have points to the fact that more than half of the sectors in the economy are in red as of the third quarter of last year. Now, this tells you something. If you have got more than half of your economic sectors in red, obviously your whole economy must be in some kind of trouble. Now, briefly, what do I believe is behind this? Now, from what I could gather, this is what I think was behind everything that we're saying. My friend moving from Ludwig to Commersdal, and you know, if you look carefully, closely, you will see that the whole issue, and I really stand to be challenged on this, but the whole issue was triggered by the fiscal consolidation. Because if you check on the dates and the sequence of events, a lot of these issues started coming into picture when fiscal consolidation was introduced. And I'm very glad that the ED, the executive director, also mentioned that they are sorry for that. But yeah, it has to be done. So I am sure you understand, you agree with me that really, if you look in terms of the sequence, the fiscal consolidation somehow has to be clear. Now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this because now, from the business perspective, we were now expecting to hear some good news from the budget. What is the budget going to do regarding the predicament that we have found in, which is more than partially caused by government, by budget? So now, we looked at yesterday's budget, not in isolation, but looking at it from last year, from the previous budget. Because if you look at only yesterday's numbers, you'll miss the whole picture. Now, this is what, wow, that is so small. Okay, now when we look at the 2018-19 priorities that spoke to business, this is what we figured, we gathered, and we were hoping that yesterday's budget was going to speak to these things. Because this is what happened in the mind of a business person. You tell him something today, they already begin to plan for next year. So if you tell me today that I'm going to build a railway here, my business investment decision, everything are based on what you told me. If you don't deliver next year, you have killed me. That's why it's very important that we look at the 2018-19 priorities and see whether these priorities were materialized and support the business. Now, in a nutshell, the few that I picked, one of them was to support economic growth, and here government Ministry of Finance informed us that the development budget was to increase by 30%, and economic and social infrastructure stimulus package was to be capitalized, initial funding of SME financial strategy and youth entrepreneurship, targeted budgetary transfers was to be ensured. And then when you look at the structural reforms that the minister informed us, which speak to business, the following came out, addressing the institutional framework for implementing Procurement Act. This is to really increase the competitiveness and the ease of doing business. The repeal of the State Finance Act, the rollout of ITAS, the establishment of NAMRA. MIDSMED was also highlighted and it was said that they're going to implement the single window facility, finalize the Investment Promotion Act, repeal the EPZ, and finalize the NEB, the NEF, utilize the PPP, and then we had the land conference. This was the message of last year. And then when we looked at yesterday's statement, we picked up a few. Of course, the development budget was increased by 30%, in fact, yesterday by more than this, so this was done. Economic and social infrastructure stimulus, well, from yesterday's announcement, we could say yes, this was also done. The initial funding for SME financial strategy was announced yesterday. Some numbers came out, this was done. The targeted budgetary transfer to the development, we are not very clear. Look, this money will go to DBN. And DBN, especially for the youth, you go to DBN with your application, the first thing they'll ask you, do you have a house? They don't want to see whether you are married or not. No, they want collateral. Yeah. Now, if this money is going to DBN, the government must tell us whether DBN will stop asking us those questions. Because clearly, youth don't have collateral. Yeah. So if you are going to take this money targeted for me, you better tell me now how this money will work for me. Because if it's DBN, and this is the time I spoke to so many young people, and they were like, oh, we really miss SME Bank. Because SME Bank. Okay, I'll stop here. I want to go here. Now, the second aspect. Yes, last year, Minister said, talk about the addressing the institutional framework. Now, when we look at this, we can say that in terms of the Procurement Act, it's really not done. We know of the back and forth pushing that is taking place. We don't want to go with what the media is saying, but some of these things we can clearly see. The repealing of the State Finance Act, I need to really be informed here, but as far as I'm concerned, this was not done. The rollout of ITS, this was not done. The establishment of NAMRA, this was not done. Because this was supposed to be done in March. Yesterday, of course, the minister gave a reason. But if you look at rollout, the repeal, these are they're still work in progress. So we cannot say these are done. For a businessman, you need, it's black and white. Because I cannot go to the bank and borrow money against a promise that I don't know when it will be fulfilled. So this is the dilemma we are sitting with. MIDSMET was supposed to oversee the implementation of the single window facility to really facilitate business registration. But this, as far as I'm concerned, and speaking to a lot of people who wants to use the facility of BIPA, this is clearly not done. There's still a lot that needs to be done here. Finalize the Investment Promotion Act, not done. And here is a big problem because yesterday's announcement, some of them were really hard-hitting. Repealing of the EPZ. 5 days ago, the minister, Honorable Minister of Trade, announced that EPZ brought 11 billion, pumped 11 billion. You saw the news. And then yesterday, the Minister of Finance says, we are going to scrap this. Well, I don't understand from where I'm sitting. This is the policy that brought 11 billion. You want to scrape it out and bring something else. I know they have better reason, but for me, when I look at this, at least the devil you know better than the angel you don't know. If 11 billion came in through EPZ, and then you want to bring in something that I don't know how it will work. Well, at the back of my mind, and I spoke to someone who said, maybe it's better we borrow 11 billion and pay rather than, you understand? So it was not very clear. And these are the things that are bringing uncertainty to business sector. Lastly, finalization of the NEF or NEF. We are where we don't know where this is. And this, remember, last year and the year before, it brought a lot of issues. The rating agencies hammered on this. Business sector is still not very sure as to where are we going with this. And these are the things that we really expected to come out very, very clear. Now, glad the ministry is here. Maybe they could shed some light on this. Utilization of PPP. This requires the central procurement, and you know what's happening to the central procurement board. We're not very sure whether this is really happening, and it's not really done as far as we are concerned. Holding of the land conference, yes, this one really did take place, but we don't know whether what came out was recommendation or resolution. I'm not so sure. So that's why we're saying it's not clear. Now, finally, my last slide, Mr. Mukadi. So when we take a snapshot, a quick look at yesterday's budget, yeah, we agree that it's proper because it focuses on social sectors. We are very happy. And this is really much in line with the election year, so it's an election budget. Preservation of civil service, yes, government can't really, they cannot fire. Okay, so we need to preserve civil service jobs. So it's like we are losing the war on the civil service wage bill. SOE still remains a challenge. I won't say much on this. Yeah, I might apply for a position next year. And the budget is not business friendly for the following reason. Okay, the phasing out of the current tax incentive is still very, very unclear. Remember, last year or early this year, the Minister of Trade launched an industrial policy which spoke to beneficiation. It's export-oriented. Now, if you are going to bring in all these export levies that seem like the one that does discourage export, how do you expect to implement your industrial policy? We are speaking going this way, and then we are going this way. I am not very, very much sure the alignment here between the ministry that wants to rake in millions using this and what the Minister of Trade wants to do, because beneficiation depends on the quantity that especially the mining sector will manufacture for export. We don't consume copper here, we only consume copper products that are finished. So whatever we want to manufacture is for the market. But if export levies are going to come in and we're down on this, where are we going? So from a business perspective, I think this needs to be clarified. And then you've got a number of dividends that have to come in there. I mean, if I have to pay dividend, tax on my dividend, my willingness to really invest and put my capital in, knowing that I also have to pay for tax on it, somehow it's a bit discouraging. And then finally, the hidden cost. I was very, very happy when we said, yes, we have achieved the alignment of non-core. But at what cost? How many small-scale businesses were left out there waiting for a small tender from government? How many young graduates are still in the street because of the hiring restraint? Yes, we have achieved the alignment, but at what cost? Who has to pay for this? We can be very happy that the budget is being balanced, but at what cost? From a business perspective, these are the things that really goes into our mind every day and night. The increase in social sector expenditure is very good, but how sustainable? Who is going to pay for this in future when the kitty runs out? Because if the engines of the economy are not fueled today, this thing will come and haunt us. So in as much as we are happy, it's an election, everybody's happy, social, who is going to pay for this 5 years from now? Remember, we say about 6.9 billion that we need to pay back. 6.9 billion in interest payment is equivalent to the Minister of Health's budget. The whole ministry is just going to pay the loan. Yes, I'll take so much of your time. I think I'll stop.